Joining us today, he is a teacher, the first gentleman of transportation, and the author of the book, I Have Something to Tell You, Chasten. Welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so I feel like we're in the middle of a re-examination right now for kids that were born in the 80s, in this period of growing acceptance, but not acceptance. And I think this book is about what it means to grapple with being gay when there were in some ways sort of bromides of tolerance, but a deeper way in which being gay was still something to be afraid of or afraid you were. The kids today, they have no idea what it was like.
Yeah, well, that was one of the things that I had to keep thinking about while I was writing it. It was like, will the youths get this? Like, will it mean anything? You know, will this kind of story matter? Will it resonate?
Did you watch Survivor?
A couple for early seasons.
Remember when Richard Hatch won Survivor, that first, spoiler alert, season 1 of Survivor from the year 1999. Did you watch Survivor in 1999 when Richard Hatch won?
I think so. Well, my parents were big Survivor fans. I'm sure I watched it.
Do you think it was good or bad that a nudist gay man won Survivor and then didn't pay taxes?
Okay, well, I don't know anything about it, so I don't know that.
So he won Survivor. He was out. He was a real snake. He was the first person to really crack that you could kind of like, you could like make alliances and stuff. He was really ahead of the curve. It's why he won the first season. And he was gay and it was a big deal, but he was also a nudist. And then he didn't pay taxes on the money and he got in trouble. I think he may have gone to jail. Didn't he go to jail? We think Richard Hatch may have gone to jail for not paying taxes.
I mean, you should pay your taxes.
So I wonder, it's like, the level of exposure you get from Richard Hatch.
Was he out on Survivor?
Yes, he was out on Survivor. Wow. It was a huge deal. It's 1999.
Wow.
And he's unapologetic, but he's also a nudist and making people a little bit uncomfortable by being naked all the time.
Huh.
But gay people are complicated.
I guess those are two completely different things.
And that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
But to your point in the book about not having gay role models, when there aren't that many out gay people, all of a sudden Richard Hatch is a representative of the gay community. There aren't a lot of other people who are out on television.
Yeah, I can see.
And he's a gay nudist who doesn't pay his taxes.
Yeah, I can see how people would quickly label someone like that. The same thing like Will and Grace.
Yeah.
I loved Will and Grace, but Will and Grace was so problematic for me because if I laughed too much, I was afraid that my family would think I liked it a little bit too much, and there might be a reason behind that. But then, of course, Will and Grace only showed gay men portrayed in certain ways. There's only certain types of gay men that you could be, or we had to be the butt of the joke.
Yeah,
to make everybody else comfortable.
Right. Jack is fun and loving life, and then Will kind of is lonely and single. And quite unhappy a lot of the time.
But successful. He's a professional, so he's accepted because he's this like suit-wearing, successful man who puts, career above love. And I think that was that's a soapbox that we probably don't have time for today. But.
Do you think that the gay community was hurt by the number of turtlenecks people were wearing on those shows? Because if you have a short neck, turtlenecks aren't for you. Turtlenecks aren't for me.
Are you just upset because you can't wear a turtleneck?
I am upset that I can't wear a turtleneck.
I can't wear a turtleneck.
You can't wear a turtleneck? No. Are you part of the short-necked community?
I don't. Maybe that's what they would tell me at the department store. But I feel like everyone rocks this like suit turtleneck look.
I can't do it.
I can't do it at all.
Do you feel that your head looks too low?
I just feel like I look funky.
Why do you think that is? Is it because you have a short neck? Should we talk about it? I think it's because I have a really short neck. I think I have a really short neck, and I think the turtlenecks on those shows really kind of hurt me.
I'm really sorry about that.
Thanks for saying
all of the things going on in the 80s and 90s.
I really don't like the turtlenecks. So who were, you talked about not having a lot of gay role models in the book. Who stood out to you growing up? Like, who did you look to?
Well, I didn't really have that many role models. There was Will and Grace. And of course, at this time, I also didn't know that some of these celebrities that I had grown up with were gay.
Like who?
Because that was also something that wasn't talked about. But
who was in the closet then? They all were.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Or some of them, still have to be. But Ellen was huge because my mom loved Ellen. And that to me was like a little sliver of hope.
Yeah.
Like maybe, she's a successful person. She makes my mom laugh. They're okay with that. And we don't really talk about the lesbian thing. And so that was sort of like a glimmer of hope for me.
I was going to ask you about Ellen too, because I didn't realize how much Ellen meant to me until Ellen was getting the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President Obama. And I realized in watching her get that medal that I went through this whole cycle of finding out Ellen was going to come out, watching the whole news cycle, being incredibly riveted and invested in it, and never saying it out loud, because it wasn't for another couple of years that I ended up coming out. And it wasn't until I saw Ellen accepting that Medal of Freedom that I'd never even spoken out loud about how much that had meant to me at the time. Did you talk about it, or was it just an entirely internal experience?
Talk about Ellen?
Ellen, in watching Ellen come out.
No.
Did you didn't say a word about it? It was just something that you experienced completely privately.
Yeah. So I didn't come out until I was 18. These are conversations I've had with my family after the fact. And it's because we didn't talk about them. Like, we didn't talk about this huge moment, in pop culture when Ellen came out, until much later. And that was really emotional for me too, watching her get that medal. Because I think some people may assume that we've progressed so rapidly, and then when you really take a moment and look at history, just like the last 34 years of my life, like what has happened, like being born at the tail end of the AIDS epidemic to today, where like understanding that I'm in Washington with a partner who serves, and that would not have been the reality 30 years ago. Like watching Ellen get that medal in 20 years and understanding that like she lost everything when she came out, when her character came out, when she came out, and that so much has happened in that very short period of time. But I feel like our memories don't keep up with that timeline, understanding that that timeline's actually very, very short.
Yeah, it is. It's one thing that I think about when it comes to the amount of change we've had is, even as there was this conversation around shifting norms around accepting difference on sexual orientation, there wasn't a conversation about masculinity at all. And you talk about this a little bit in the book about like not wanting to play football, but wanting to go fishing, not feeling totally like you're one of the boys. And I do wonder, like, that does seem to be changing now.
Masculinity had to look a very certain way. You were a jock or a geek. The circles that I was growing up in church and 4-H and, our high school was like the school where people would occasionally drive their snowmobiles to school, or like their tractors, right? Mm-hmm. Or, people who clung to like very certain idols of manhood or masculinity. And I just didn't see a space for me there. It didn't resonate to me, but I also wasn't hyper focused on presenting that because I didn't feel like that mattered as much to me. Like athletics to some men. Sometimes I feel like I have to extend them like a shred of pity too, because I feel like we're all just trying to blend in, and I didn't really have a group to get caught up in, and some of them just got caught up in that. Right?
Yeah, it's
like performance.
I guess I'd be interested to hear you talk a little bit about like what you want the younger generation to take away from this experience of growing up at a time when you really were expected to conform. Like that was and you felt that pressure every day.
Yeah, I mean I certainly wrote the book from my experience. So it was the experience of a gay person conforming and surviving, coming out and now reflecting back on that. But I think the book is for any young person who's ever felt like a fish out of water, or a person who has felt like they're forced to conform. And I also think it'll be a great resource for teachers and parents to understand what young people are going through, or what they could be going through, and you might be unaware of that. And also the pain and the hurt that is inflicted upon young people by ignorance, and the good that can come from having these conversations and making space for everyone.
I have some silly questions for you, but before we get there,
those weren't the silly questions.
No, just buckle up for the silly
I thought
questions.
The turtleneck was a silly.
That was it. That was more of just like kind of an aside. I think it was just an aside that came to me in the moment. You go through your first round of coming out. You had a Bush bumper sticker on your car at some point. Is that right?
Yeah.
And that came off.
Yeah.
Where you got a different car, but you don't think that way anymore, obviously. But you kind of go through that first round, and you kind of, I don't know. I know for me, I think it's true for a lot of people when they first come out, they go through their kind of zealot of the convert kind of phase right at the beginning. But for me, it's taken me till 40, an age that I currently am, to realize how much internalized homophobia, and more than that, like internalized performance of masculinity, I carry around even to this day, even in moments where I'm using a voice that isn't as effeminate as I might otherwise have used.
Our podcast voices?
This is I don't know. This is our podcast voice, but I don't know. I don't know is this as gay as my voice could be? Maybe, but it could be gayer.
I totally know what you're saying. Yeah. I drop into my podcast voice sometimes.
But even as you say it, your podcast voice is a straighter voice. It's a more deeper voice.
Yeah.
And even when I'm asking I'm getting sillier now. My voice is getting bigger and gayer. But when I ask a question about something important, my voice becomes like this.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's natural. I think that might be a performance. And I'm wondering if you feel that even now you're writing this book about sort of what it means to try to figure out how to be yourself. But even now, do you feel right now that you can ever kind of be outside of the bounds you set when you were a kid, when you were living by these fears? Is that the gayest your voice can be?
Oh, no.
It can be gayer.
You should see me on karaoke night.
It can be gayer. We can all be gayer. We can use gayer voices. I'm going to use a gayer voice for the rest of this episode.
I think we're constantly coming to terms with who we thought we had to be when we were younger, who we thought we could be when we came out, and then the space in between where you're like still policing yourself.
Yeah. Are you still doing that? You're still policing
all
yourself?
The time. Well, also because of, where I'm at in life. And I know that so many people are watching everything that I do and everything that my family does. And I'm, pairing that with the absolute destruction of morality on the other side of the aisle right now.
Yeah.
And understanding that how they will weaponize my family, my children, and my performance of masculinity or identity. And I'm conscious of that more than I would like to admit, because it's a big deal. You know? I certainly never thought that I would be in this chair one day. I never thought that my family would be who we are today. Just this weekend, Pete and I were pushing the stroller, and there was like these corner preachers in our neighborhood. And we walked by, and like we had just gone to a little indie bookstore celebrating like indie bookstore Saturday, and we like sat down with the kids and like picked out some books and like did
drag brunch,
coloring sheets. No drag brunch.
Okay.
But Tara wasn't performing that Saturday. But you're having a great morning, like celebrating our neighborhood and going to this little store, and then we're just like pushing the stroller. We're going to go to another indie bookstore, and these corner preachers are like, "Look at these homosexuals! Like those aren't their kids," and they're just like yelling in their microphones at us. And then I'm in my head like, what do I want to say as a parent? What do I want to say as a human? And what do I want to say as a gay man? And then of course, I'm like, I don't want to say anything because I don't want to give this person a platform, and I don't want this person to know that I care about what they have to think, but sometimes it just comes not creeping in, but crashing in.
So that's when it's crashing in. What about the times when it's not so clear? Like you were hinting at it a little bit. I'm actually genuinely curious about like moments when you feel this sort of creeping heteronormativity, this desire to make sure that you're being not just being good parents, not just being a good spouse, but doing it in a way that is good for the movement, that helps the cause amongst people that might not be totally comfortable yet. What does that look like?
Yeah, that one's really confusing to me. Because I remember being on the cover of Time magazine, which was like a life shock. And then like the conversation around it was like, oh, they're just performing heteronormativity. Yeah. And like, to me, I was like, I just have my arm around my partner, posing for this photo. Like, I'm not trying to perform anything. It's just who I am. Same thing with like the kids. Like, I've always wanted kids. I've always wanted to be a dad. In fact, I sort of knew I wanted to be a dad more than I knew I wanted to be a teacher or a writer. It's just something I've always wanted. And now I have this great family and a loving spouse and 2 really cool kids. And I never get around to sending the Christmas cards, but if I did, they'd probably be cute. But it's not like that's not something I feel like I'm performing, but I understand why people assume that, but also like can't queer people just be families too? Like, what's heteronormative about it? Can't we just also just want to raise a family and be a family?
Right. But it is, I do sometimes think, you talked about this with Pat, that like, I sometimes and Pete, especially Pete gets, certainly gay enough to be despised on Fox News and to be held out an example and to be to be used as a cudgel during a natural disaster or a train derailment in a way that no previous Secretary of Transportation would ever be used. You're having kids being held up, paternity leave or parental leave being treated as some horrible thing to take, even though everybody takes it. So draws that acrimony, and yet, because there's on the other side this sense that what you're doing is criticized as being not gay enough, right? That he's not Met Gala gay, he's McKinsey gay, and that's something that means there's not the same level of, well, it's not as fun or it's not as exciting to us anymore. It doesn't get the same level of kind of love from the left either. Do you find that? Does that ring true to you?
I certainly am on social media, so
oh, that's a mistake.
But I also get it. Like, I get wanting to see progress happen faster, and I especially understand from when I'm talking to young people who get really frustrated about the slowness of progress in our country, where they might see someone like me come in and sit across from them and be like, you don't know what my life is like. You don't know what it's like. That's just why I try to do as much listening as I can and growing. I think it's important that we all commit to constantly growing and listening, which I don't think the other side of the aisle gets. Like with this stuff, like with masculinity, the culture wars, especially trans Americans, rather than like pause and listen to the wider American medical community, advocacy groups, they've just like built up a wall around them, right? Like we're clinging to like what we know. We don't want to do anything different. And I see it differently.
All right. But before we let you go, we're going to do rapid fire.
Okay.
All right. Let's get into it. Are you going to the Eras Tour?
The what?
The Eras Tour. Taylor Swift.
No, I couldn't get tickets.
Favorite Taylor Swift song?
Oh.
And you can get tickets. Come on. He can get tickets. Come on, pull some strings, huh?
I saw a video this morning. It was like a dad dancing with his daughter at a Taylor Swift concert, and there are all these empty chairs next to them. It's like, excuse me.
Scalpers.
Where was this and when was this? Okay, favorite Taylor Swift song.
Mine's Exile. I love that song, Exile.
Really?
Yeah. I like the moody stuff. I like poignancy.
I like Mean, All Too Well. All Too Well, so great. That was a good breakup song for me, too.
What's the worst gift Pete has ever given you?
Oh. He actually didn't. I dropped so many hints that I thought it would be really cute to give each other a gift on our wedding day.
Mm-hmm.
So many hints. Like I really like this tradition that I've heard from people. And so I got him cufflinks, and I had a friend sneak into his room the day of the wedding and leave the card and the cufflinks.
Wow, it's thoughtful.
Yeah,
and nothing.
And I will never ever let him forget it.
What is the gayest thing? You won't let him forget it. What is the gayest thing you and Pete watch on TV?
Well, we don't watch a lot of TV, but I guess The White Lotus. I'm a big Jennifer Coolidge fan. I don't
really
think
we'll count it.
Gay,
We'll count it. You both watch White Lotus together?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, busy guy. We don't watch a lot of TV.
Mostly books, huh?
We don't watch books on the TV. We usually read them.
All right. What's one gay value you hope to impart to your children?
A gay value?
Yeah, a gay value. Don't wear white after Labor Day. Don't mix blue and navy. Love each other. I don't know. You tell me. It could mean anything you want it to mean.
I don't know. I'm just trying to raise them to be kind, inclusive people. But I guess they do like their fair share of show tunes right now.
Okay.
We do show tunes at breakfast.
So no Andrew Lloyd Webber. That could be a rule. Why are gay guys such bad drivers?
Are they?
Yeah. You're not aware of that?
Is this a stigma I don't know about?
You know what I'm talking about. Okay. Well,
Why? Why don't you answer the question?
I don't know. I actually don't know why I'm such a bad driver. If I knew, I'd be a little bit better at it.
Huh? I think I'm a great driver.
But everyone thinks they're a great driver. That's the whole problem.
I got 2 kids in the back of my minivan. I know I'm a good driver.
It's a minivan?
Oh, it's a minivan. It's a plug-in hybrid minivan.
A plug-in hybrid minivan.
You know it is.
I don't know. I think that's a hate crime. What as a kid did you see on TV that you completely loved but knew on some level you shouldn't because it wasn't what boys loved? Mine is when Miss Piggy and Joan Rivers go crazy with the makeup in Muppets Take Manhattan. Remember that? Do you remember that?
I feel like you got way too much time to prepare for this.
I thought of this 5 seconds before this interview. Olivia can attest. Muppets Take Manhattan. Miss Piggy, she's disappointed in her Kermie. She comes back all despondent. Joan Rivers gives her a makeover. They lose it. They get fired from the department store. Do you remember that?
No.
Are you gay or not?
I know. Well, you tell all these great stories. Like, do you understand how like closeted and dramatic my childhood was? Like, I was probably mucking a barn and like.
And you were cleaning the fish. You were doing the fish things. And goats, were there goats? What happens? Were you cleaning the... I'm not from... Look, Michigan, I know where it is.
So yeah, you got to watch Joan Rivers and Miss Piggy. And
it's just on television.
Probably, like, turn it off and go outside and clean the barn.
And so that's what you did. You cleaned the barn.
Yeah. But God, what was the question? The gayest thing I watched?
What's the gayest thing you saw as a kid on TV but knew you weren't supposed to like?
Spice World?
Okay, that's good. Spice World counts.
Yeah.
That's camp. I think that's queer. When I was at summer camp, I didn't like playing all the sports and I wanted to come home. And the owner of the camp called my mother and said, "For boys like Jonathan, that's why we do the musicals." Care to comment?
No, but I just want to go back to like the conversation about like, are you gay or are you not gay enough? And then you just asked me if I'm gay because I didn't see Miss Piggy and Joan Rivers on television.
Hey, I want you to know something.
And I just feel like the bus came out of nowhere and I got thrown right underneath it.
Well, if there's a bus coming out of nowhere, talk to your husband. That sounds like a transportation problem to me. I have never said that I wasn't a hypocrite. I'm a proud hypocrite. I don't always make sense, and I'm not coherent, and I stand by that.
That's good of you.
Do you think this went okay? How do you feel about this?
This was certainly an experience that we all shared together. In this room. How do you feel like it went?
I just want to know that you felt good about it.
Oh, yeah.
So you didn't get to go on...
this is stuff I could talk about all day, though. I think these are really important conversations, so I appreciate having it.
And you couldn't go on Kelly Clarkson because of the writer strike.
Yeah.
So now this is like
unions.
We're supporting unions, but this became like you flew out here and now you're just basically doing this.
Come on, John. Don't be mean to yourself like that.
Anything else we should talk about? The book is I Have Something to Tell You.
Thanks for having the conversation, because I also think it's really important that you have this platform, and it's great that you get to talk about
whatever I want.
Well, yeah, but I'm sure that it's important to you too.
It is important to me.
Some of these things, and
I'm glad people listening finally found out that I'm gay.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a bombshell for a lot of your listeners.
And my parents. Oh my God, my parents listen to this. Mom, Dad,
I have something to tell you.
I'm still gay. Oh yeah, you did the book title.
Thank you.
All right, let's leave it there. I think we should stop now. Chasten Buttigieg, everybody.